We're here from the Girl Scouts of Northeast Texas to earn the Texas Women's Right to Vote patch. This year we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage with this special patch program. We have really great information, some fun games for you to play, and be sure you stay tuned all the way through to the end of the video for a fun game that you can play with your family and friends at home.
Hi, I'm Stacy, and I'm a Girl Scout in Dallas, Texas.
Hi, I'm Hillary. I'm also a Girl Scout in Dallas, Texas.
Because we're Girl Scouts, let's start today's program with the promise in law. The Girl Scout promise.
On my honor, I will try to serve God and my country, to help people at all times, and to live by the Girl Scout law.
The Girl Scout law.
I will do my best to be honest and fair, friendly and helpful, considerate and caring, courageous and strong, responsible for what I say and do, and to respect myself and others, respect authority, use resources wisely, make the world a better place, and be a sister to every Girl Scout.
Today we're talking about the importance of the suffrage movement.
What is women's suffrage?
That means 100 years ago, our mothers, grandmothers, and great-grandmothers fought for our right to vote.
To help you earn this patch today, we're going to highlight some incredible women that played an integral part in women's suffrage, talk about the unique role Texas played in the movement, learn more about voting today, and share the importance of voting with our friends and family. Don't forget to watch all the way through to the end of the video to involve your friends and family in all the fun.
Our country was built on a document we know as the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution established this country as a democracy, identified by the phrase, one person, one vote. Yet, the framework of our government did not originally give the right to vote to everyone. When the U.S. Constitution was drafted in Philadelphia in 1787, women were not included in the debates and discussions of how to govern the country. Participation in this new democracy did not extend past the white men who qualified by meeting various religious, property, and tax-paying criteria.
The first Women's Rights Convention was held in 1848 in Seneca Falls, New York. Originally known as the Women's Rights Convention, the Seneca Falls Convention fought for the social, civil, and religious rights of women. The meeting was held from July 19th to July 20th in 1848 at the Wesleyan Chapel in Seneca Falls, New York.
Women and men came together at this convention and used the words of the Declaration of Independence to demand that women be afforded the right to vote.
Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, and Frederick Douglass were some of the prominent names responsible for these initial actions. The 68 women and 32 men who signed their names to this document became the foundation of the suffrage movement.
Black men were granted the right to vote in 1870 with the ratification of the 15th Amendment, but Black women were denied this right until the passing of the 19th Amendment in 1920. Now, there were a ton of women who protested, marched, participated in civil disobedience, and contributed to the other ways to help give women the right to vote. But we don't have time to talk about all of them today. Today we're going to highlight 3 amazing trailblazers in the movement. Do you know what a trailblazer is?
A trailblazer means someone who created a new path. In this instance, we're talking about women who created a path for women's voices to be represented in our country. First up is Susan B. Anthony.
Susan B. Anthony was a teacher, a speaker, an activist for women's rights, especially women's right to vote. She was born 200 years ago in 1820. She was raised in a Quaker family, which is a type of Christianity that teaches equal rights for men and women.
Susan took her first job as a teacher, but when she realized that women were being paid less than men, she quit to go and advocate for women's rights. To advocate means to stand up for a cause or an issue.
Susan traveled all over the country speaking in support of women's suffrage, giving as many as 75 to 100 speeches each year. People didn't always agree with her. In fact, some people even yelled at her, interrupted her, and even threw eggs at her. But Susan never gave up.
That's right. In 1872, Susan B. Anthony went and voted, even though it was illegal at the time. This is a common form of protest called civil disobedience, where a person does something that they know is illegal, but they do it because they believe the law should be changed.
Susan was arrested for voting and was fined, but never paid that fine because she said it was unjust or unfair. She continued to fight for women's rights until she died in 1906. Although she didn't live to see her work fulfilled, all of her advocacy paid off, and in 1920, 14 years after she died, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified, giving women the right to vote.
Susan B. Anthony was a very important part of the women's suffrage movement, but she didn't win the right for women to vote all on her own. There were hundreds of women across the country working together to change what they saw as an unjust and unfair law. Susan B. Anthony worked very closely with another trailblazer in the women's suffrage movement, Elizabeth Cady Stanton.
Elizabeth's father was a lawyer and even served in the United States Congress. As a young girl, she enjoyed reading her father's law books and debating legal issues. It was during these early years that Elizabeth realized how unfairly laws treated women. This early realization shaped her future as an activist for fairness and equality.
Elizabeth Cady Stanton was only 24 years old when she was working internationally to try to end slavery. But when she arrived in London at the World Anti-Slavery Convention, she and the dozens of other women who were there were blocked from participation. This was a turning point for Elizabeth. In the face of discrimination while trying to stand up for others, Elizabeth decided to narrow her activist work to women's suffrage. She believed that women's right to vote was the key to gaining equal rights for women on a broader scale, and she fought relentlessly despite resistance from people in her life, including her own husband.
Elizabeth Cady Stanton was one of the organizers of the first convention of the women's right to vote in Seneca Falls, New York. Elizabeth worked directly with Susan B. Anthony and others to write a Declaration of Sentiments, a document which was modeled after the Declaration of Independence that proposed equal rights for women. The Declaration of Sentiments was signed in 1848 by 100 people at the convention, 68 women and 32 men at Seneca Falls, and passed. This signing officially marked the beginning of the women's suffrage movement. It would be another 72 years until women officially won the right to vote with the passing of the 19th Amendment in 1920.
After the 19th Amendment was ratified in 1920, Black women voted in elections and held political offices. However, many states passed laws that discriminated against African Americans and limited their freedoms. Black women continued to fight for their rights. One of the trailblazers in the fight for Black women's right to vote was Mary Jane McLeod Bethune.
Mary McLeod Bethune was an educator, author, and African American civil rights leader. She was born in South Carolina to parents who had been slaves. Although she began working in the fields herself at the age of 5, Mary was determined to create a better life for herself and others. From an early age, she showed an interest in education, and with the help of benefactors, Mary attended college.
Mary started a school for African American girls in Daytona Beach, Florida. She maintained high standards and promoted the school with tourists and donors to demonstrate what educated African Americans could do. She was the president of the college for several years. She was one of the few women in the world to serve as college president at that time.
Although education was Mary McLeod Bethune's greatest passion, she knew that access to education alone would not be enough to gain equality for African Americans. In 1896, the National Association of Colored Women was formed to promote the needs of Black women. Mary stepped up and served as the Florida chapter president of the NACW from 1917 to 1925. She worked to register Black voters, which was resisted by white society and had been made almost impossible by a variety of obstacles in Florida law and practices controlled by white administrators.
Mary faced opposition and hate from racists, but she never gave up on fighting for what was right. In 1935, Bethune founded the National Council of Negro Women in New York City, bringing together representatives of 28 different organizations to work to improve the lives of Black women and their communities. Tens of thousands of African Americans worked over several decades to secure suffrage, which occurred when the Voting Rights Act passed in 1965. This act represents more than a century of work by Black women to make voting easier and more equitable.
Wow, those women were incredible. Did you notice anything that they had in common?
Did you?
Perseverance in the face of discrimination and resistance, strong-held convictions in equality, and a high regard for education.
Because of trailblazers like these three women and hundreds more, all women in the United States have the right to vote.
But I thought it was hard to meet voter registration qualifications.
That's a voting myth. Anyone can register to vote if they're a United States citizen, if they're the age of 18 on the day of the election, and they're a resident in the state which they're voting in.
That's it?
That's it.
Nice. So let's play a game to distinguish voting facts from voting fiction.
True or false? You don't have to wait until election day to vote when you're voting in Texas.
True! Texas, like many other states, has a great early vote program, which allows people the option to go vote at a time and place that is convenient to their schedule before Election Day. True or false? Early voters aren't counted the same as Election Day votes.
False! Casting your ballot early doesn't affect the way that your vote is counted. It's counted just the same as Election Day votes. True or false? I have to remember to bring my voter ID card with me when I go vote. False!
Although it's a good idea to have it on you, there are many different types of identification cards you can use to vote. Be sure to check your state requirements because each state is different. True or false? If I'm turning 18 on Election Day, I am eligible to vote in that election.
True! Remember, the requirements to vote are being a U.S. citizen, 18 at the time of the election, and a resident of the state in which you're voting. True or false? Someone else can register me to vote. False!
You have to register yourself. Fill out a registration form, sign the form yourself. Registration must take place 30 days before an election to be eligible to vote in that election. True or false? Elections occur every 4 years in November.
False! Presidential elections only occur every 4 years, but elections happen much more often than that to elect federal, state, and local officials, to decide state and local policies, and a lot of important things that affect your everyday life. True or false? If I do not vote in an election, I have to re-register for the next one.
False! Registration at the time is permanent. You do not have to vote in each or any election to remain registered as long as you do not move out of the country you are registered in. However, you must re-register when you move, change your address, change your name, or wish to change political parties. True or false? If I'm away from my home county on Election Day, I can still vote.
True! You can vote an absentee ballot. Contact your voter's registration office for information on how to register for absentee voting. True or false? If I am disabled, I must still vote at a polling place.
False! You can vote by absentee ballot. Law establishes a permanent absentee vote status for those whose mobility is impaired. Call your county voter registration office to learn more.
Since Stacy and I are talking to you from the great state of Texas, because this patch was designed for Girl Scouts in Texas, we thought it would be fun to talk about some Texas-specific facts around women's suffrage.
Did you know that Texas was actually the first state in the South to ratify the 19th Amendment, granting the women right to vote?
That's right. The question of whether women should be granted the privilege of voting rights was first ratified in Texas during the Constitutional Convention all the way back in 1868. But at that time, the proposal was rejected by a vote of 52 to 13.
As the women's suffrage movement became more organized over the next 4 decades, supporters realized that the issue was perceived to be more of a social threat rather than a political one. Many argued that enfranchised women would cause women to neglect their homes, children, and their domestic responsibilities.
It was up to suffragists to articulate that women were citizens too, and entitled to have a say in governmental affairs. To generate support at the grassroots level, it became vital to educate and inform public opinion in an accessible manner.
Women's suffrage clubs sponsored lectures, conducted debates, organized essay contests, managed booths at fairs and department stores, marched in parades, and wrote music, plays, and newspaper articles to spread awareness. While these efforts helped make women's enfranchisement an activist issue, concrete results were not achieved until the governorship of William P. Hobby from 1917 to 1921. Texas suffragists had pledged to support Hobby during the election if he would push for the passage of the bill that would grant women the right to vote in Texas primary elections. Primary suffrage was a more realistic goal than a full suffrage, as it required only a simple majority of both the legislative houses and the governor's signature.
The bill was passed by a wide margin and was signed into law on March 26, 1918, offering women the right to vote in the great state of Texas. By May 1919, Hobby recommended that the Texas Constitution be amended to offer full voting rights to women, but the amendment was defeated by a majority of 25,000 votes. On June 4th, the U.S. Senate passed the Susan B. Anthony Amendment, which stipulated that if 3/4 of the states ratified the amendment, women would have the right to vote nationwide.
The Texas legislature convened in a special session, and Hobby placed the women's suffrage amendment on the agenda. By this point, women suffragists had become a part of the mainstream, and in spite of some opposition, the amendment was approved by the Texas Senate on June 28th. Texas became the 9th state in the Union and the first in the South to ratify the 19th Amendment.
It seems like a lot of women fought a lot of battles to get equal rights to vote, but there are a lot of people who are eligible to vote and don't bother. Stacey, I know you always vote in every election. Why is voting important to you?
Well, Hillary, thanks for asking. Voting is super important to me. I believe voting is my opportunity to tell my politicians and my legislators what I like that they're doing and what I don't like. Giving me the opportunity to vote allows me to say, yes, I think you made a great change, or no, I really don't agree with that change, or even, I want a new politician. How about you, Hillary? Why do you vote?
I think it's really important to vote because the policies that our legislators make affect our everyday lives. And although you might not realize it when you're going about your day-to-day routine, it actually does make a pretty serious impact. So I like to make sure that I am voicing my opinion on who is representing my interests and whether or not they're doing a good job representing those interests, because I know that it is important and affects me every day.
I love that, Hillary. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for asking, Stacy, and thanks for sharing too.
Now it's time to find out why the people in your life vote. Pause this video and go ask an adult in your life why voting is important to them.
Welcome back! The next thing we're going to do is learn how someone can register to vote. Do you remember the requirements to register to vote?
Let me see if I remember them. I think you have to be a U.S. citizen, 18 years old by election day, and a resident of the state that you're registered in to vote.
So my sister is in high school and she's turning 18 on November 1st this year. Does that mean she's old enough to register to vote?
Well, yes, it does.
That's great.
While she won't be able to vote in a primary or special election, she will be able to vote in the general election, and she should definitely go register now.
But where and how?
Forms are available at a variety of locations, such as post offices, libraries, fire stations, the Department of Motor Vehicle offices, city and county offices. You can contact your voter registration office in your county to get a form sent to your home. You can also register to vote online at www.usa.gov/register-to-vote.
And once she's filled out that registration form, she's registered?
Not quite. You are registered when you receive a voter registration card form, not form from the registrar recorder. It should arrive in the mail within 30 days.
What goes on a voter registration form?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. Let's practice filling out a mock voter registration card together. If you don't already have a pen or pencil and some paper, pause this video while you go get that, and then we'll walk you through the steps together.
Everyone ready? Okay. The first thing you're going to need to write is your full name, your first, your middle, and your last name. Make sure you use your full legal name, even if you go by a different nickname.
Now, write your birth date with numbers, starting with the month, then the date, then the year. So, for instance, today would be 03-20-2020.
Great. Next, you're going to write out your address. This should include your street address, apartment or unit number if you have one, the city that you live in, the state you live in, and your zip code. If you don't know your zip code, you can go ask a trusted adult to help you with that one.
When you complete your real voter registration card, you will also need to include an identification number and declare your party affiliation. You can learn more about political parties in the United States later.
When you're ready to register to vote for real, remember you can find forms at many public locations such as your post office, libraries, fire department, the Department of Motor Vehicle offices, city or county offices, or you can register to vote online. And if you're in Texas like us, remember you have to mail in your registration at least 30 days before an election to be eligible to vote. If you live in another state, ask a trusted adult to help you find out when to register.
In order to complete this page, it's your turn to take action. Choose one of the projects as your Women's Suffrage Take Action activity.
You can find suggestions for your Take Action project when you look at the full patch program curriculum using this link here, gsnetx.org/patches.
Now, you can also grab some family members and some friends and review what we learned with this Kahoot game. Here is the link to the Kahoot game. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're so happy we were able to share this Women's Vote Patch curriculum with you.
Thanks for watching. We hope that you learned a lot and you are excited to vote when you turn 18.
Thank you.